Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ryan Bort. I am the Brand Experience Coordinator here at TechSmith, and I will be your host today. We're really excited for today's webinar. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes going over the new features that came out with Camtasia 2020. Camtasia 2020 came out a week ago today, and there's some really powerful, useful stuff, and we're very excited to show you that today. So like I said, we're going to take about 45 minutes. We're going to highlight all that for all of you, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. Note before we get into all that is today we will be using a PC to go over these new features, but if you're on a Mac, that's perfectly fine. Almost everything we cover will still apply to you, and if it doesn't, we'll be sure to call that out. So with all of that said, I want to introduce you all to the person who will be taking you through Camtasia 2020 today, and that's Jason Valade. Jason, good morning.
Hey Ryan, how are we doing today? I'm so excited. This is the first official Camtasia 2020 webinar post-release, so I'm excited to share this with the world today.
Yeah, and we're excited to see it. Jason works on our customer education team, and he's an instructional designer. So basically every day he works with the product, he teaches people how to use it, so he's the perfect person to walk us through it today. So Jason, with that, I'll let you take it away. I believe you had a couple of poll questions you were going to start with and give us an opportunity to learn a little more about the audience today.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer those questions. I really appreciate it. Now, let's get into Camtasia 2020. So on the screen, that's kind of been teased out here a little bit, we have the welcome window inside of Camtasia. Now, this looks a little familiar if you're a Camtasia user, but there is a significant change to our welcome window, and that is actually a tie-in to one of the major parts of the new version of Camtasia, and that is the inclusion of this, the ability to utilize something we're calling templates. So templates falls under the speed and consistency for all theme, where you can actually quickly start creation of a video based on the use of a template. And we're actually going to do that right now and show you what that looks like. We actually can toggle through by clicking templates and choose any number of templates that are installed. However, majority of you, when you install Camtasia 2020 for the first time and you choose new from template, you'll actually get brought to this. This is the template manager. And I actually have a ton of different templates already installed, but you will have one available to you at installation, and that is this one, the Camtasia 2020 default template. And we're going to select that one and choose new from template in the lower right-hand corner to get ourselves started. So templates, when this opens up in the editor, actually gives you a quick start into the video creation process. If you're familiar with Camtasia at all, if you open a new project, it opens up blank. There's nothing in the media bin, your timeline is empty, as well as the canvas. It's waiting for you to add content. Well, with a template, we actually do a little bit of the work for you right away. First, you'll notice that here in the media bin, there's a couple of pieces of media that are here, as well as some content down here on the timeline. So the timeline in this particular template has three things. One, there is an intro. It's actually an animated introduction that we have animated here. There is an outro, which has animations that match that intro, so you have a nice consistent feel to your video. And right in the middle, there's something brand new called a placeholder. So a placeholder is exactly that. It is a place that you can position in a template, or that a template can be made and shared with you with a little bit of instruction as to what can go in that place. So in this position, it says, the placeholder says screen video recording here, and actually has a drag media onto the placeholder on the timeline. On the placeholder itself, there's also a little notepad over here on the right-hand side. And if I click on that, it opens up the properties panel. And the properties panel gives a little bit more of instructions here. It says replace this clip with a screen recording. You can record your screen using the red record button, and then drag and drop it onto this clip to replace it. That is where the magic of the templates comes into place. The ability to replace media on your timeline. Here's how easy it is to do that. Actually, before I do that, I do want you to notice that on this placeholder, there is a transition, a fade in and a fade out. What we'll do is we're going to go into my library, and I actually have a library here called What's New, and it's some content that I have ready for today. And one of the things I have is this walkthrough of a mock website that we have. I'm going to create a video by using this recording and that template. I simply click and drag the content from the library right down onto that placeholder. When it turns green, I let go and I choose Ripple Replace, which means it's going to replace that placeholder with my recording. And just like that, I have a video with an intro, my screen recording, and an outro. So not only was it easy to add my content in, I can further customize my experience by clicking on the intro and the outro and using their quick property assets. So if you're not familiar with these actually came out in Camtasia 2019, but they've become a lot more helpful within a template. And that is, I can click on this intro and go over to the properties panel and make changes based on my content needs. So if I wanted to say the title is going to be adding a person, new workflow, we'll call it. So just by clicking those two title and subtext, I've changed the text on my intro. If I have any themes installed or I've built a theme based around a company or content, like I have this Acme one, it'll change the colors, it'll change the logo, and I can easily do that to my intro and my outro. Click on the outro, apply that same theme, or I can locate my own logo and change the colors here. Maybe change this, and we'll just leave it at your site here. So now with a couple of clicks and a dragging of a recorded content that I already had, I have now made a video here within Camtasia using a template that is easily shared. It's on brand because I did all the work before, matching the colors and the icons and whatnot. And in a couple of seconds, I made a complete video ready to go. Okay. There's a couple things you can do here with templates that I think is really powerful to note. One is, you may notice on my track, I have these chevron patterns here, these little arrows. Well, this goes along with something else that comes with templates, and that is the idea of track magnetization. Magnetizing tracks is a way that we got to help to our users to eliminating those gaps that they might find in their content. Maybe you've moved a piece of media, deleted something, all that comes into play. And I'm going to show you how that works here in just a second. We're going to make a template from scratch right now because you can do that very easily. So I'm going to go up here to the File menu and I'm going to choose New Project. Won't worry about saving this one for right now. But now I have a editor that you might be familiar with, which is blank and ready to be used. So I'm actually going to lean on some content that's already in Camtasia. We'll go to Camtasia 2020 library because there's already a lot of royalty-free assets available to me. I'm going to go to the intros folder and I'm going to go to my favorite one, which is the state intro. I'm going to click it, drag it down onto my timeline. So it's all set to go. And I'm actually going to help people out by changing the theming right to that Acme theme. So it's already branded color-wise. It's set to go. Then I'm going to move my playhead down further and I'm going to add one of those placeholders we saw. And adding placeholders is as easy as hitting the letter P on your keyboard. I hit P and I have a placeholder added. Now the placeholder has properties associated with it, and that can be done over here in the properties panel. I can change the title of it. So before it was screen recording, we're actually going to do that again. We're going to call this a screen recording placeholder. Use your current media. And this placeholder acts like a piece of media, meaning I can adjust it, I can shorten it, lengthen it, I can add animations to it like we had before. So let's go into our animations tab. Let's go into our transitions tab and we'll do something as simple as a fade in and fade out. Okay. I'm going to bring my playhead down further, and add another placeholder, and we'll call this one B-roll, which is just going to be content that we've captured around the office. And we'll add that same fade in, fade out action. So now I've got this placeholder that'll fade in and fade out. I've got this one that's set to go. And let's add an outro as well. So we'll go back to our library. We use that same state intro for my outros just for consistency. And we will add that same theme. So right now I've got a video built. I've got an intro built, an outro, and I've got placeholders to help my content creators or me at a later date use a template. But if you've noticed, I put the placeholders in, but as the playhead goes, there's these blank spaces where the playhead's going over a section of the video that has no content in it. Well, I could click and drag each one of these pieces of media and drag them together and then hopefully drag this one and hope I didn't goof any spaces up. Or I could come to the left side of the track, choose this little magnet icon here, click it once, and enable track magnetization. And just like that, this track has all the pieces of media connected to each other, all dragged to the left, so that I can be assured that there's no gaps between any of the pieces of media. This is super helpful in terms of making sure that you're putting out a quality piece of content. And because that comes into play and the track magnetization is there, if I choose to remove something, like let's say I don't want to use this placeholder anymore, I'm just going to hit delete on my keyboard when I have it selected. And because that track is still magnetized, all that content stays magnetized together and connected. Let's undo it and bring it in there. I also have the ability to insert media in between things on a magnetized track. So let's say, for example, I wanted that state intro piece of media in between these two pieces of content. I can actually drag it down into the middle. And as long as I drag it where two pieces of media are connected, just like that, I've easily added content right in the middle of my video. So helpful. So the thing is, I've made a template. How do I share it with other people? Well, it's as simple as going up to File and then choosing Save Project as Template. When I choose that option, I am allowed to give it a name. We'll call it Acme Screen. And when I hit OK, my template has been saved to my template manager, found right here under File, Manage Templates. And now I have a brand new template that I can use for videos in the future, as well as sharing that content out with other people. By the way, if you have an existing project, somebody's watched one of your videos and is like, oh man, I wish I could make a video just like that. You can take an existing project that you have and right click on any piece of media on the timeline and choose Convert to Placeholder. So you can take an existing video that's got recording in it and change it into placeholders and save it as a template. And all of a sudden you have created a template based on a video that you've already created and be able to share that with other people. So that is talking about speed and consistency for all inside of Camtasia 2020 with the introduction of templates. And so a couple questions have come in. One of the questions is wondering how easy it is to replace content on other pieces of other videos. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So we'll go into open up a recent project. And I've got that one right here in my What's New folder. And just like we were talking before, if I drag content down onto the placeholder and let go and choose Ripple Replace, I have that content ready to go. Right click on any of that content we had existing and choose Convert to Placeholder. All right. So it looks like they're gathering the questions up right now, but I'm going to go to the next section and talk about working your way faster within Camtasia. So some of you with an eagle eye may have noticed over on the left-hand side in my tool area, there is a new tool item, a menu item called Favorites. Yes, favorites have finally made their way to Camtasia. No more searching around for your frequently used annotations and effects. You can simply find the tools that you're going to use most commonly and add them to your favorites menu. And it could not be any easier to do. So let's actually go in. Mine is empty right now. And I am going to show you how I add items to my favorites menu. And here's how that works. We're going to go to the annotations tool, and there's a couple of annotations in here that I use on a regular basis. One for certain is this red callout, speech bubble callout. Now, as I hover my mouse over any of these callouts, you may notice there is a star in the upper right-hand corner. Well, by selecting that star and turning it yellow, it takes that piece of media and adds it to my favorites menu. So I could walk through all of this different content and simply click stars on the ones that I want to use most often. Like for me, when I go to the blur and highlight tool, I use our spotlight tool all the time. So I'm going to add that one to my favorites menu, as well as the blur tool, because they're used most commonly for me. I also am going to go to the transition section and add the glow transition, the fade transition, and one of our newer ones that we added, I think it's fun, the whip spin. And just by clicking all those stars and going back to the favorites menu, I now have a populated menu of my favorite tools, transitions, and different callouts that I can utilize within my projects without having to go find them and dig them out. But there's actually an additional part to favorites that makes this part even more powerful, and that is the inclusion of the ability to create presets inside of Camtasia. Now, for me, this comes into effect most often when I want to use a behavior. So behaviors, if you're not familiar, they came into Camtasia a couple versions ago, and behaviors allow you to add animations and transitions and movement with very little effort. In fact, you can just do it with a click and a drag. And there is one type of animation in terms of behaviors that I use all the time, and it's this pop-up one. And I'll just drag this onto this media, and the pop-up one looks like this. It pops up into place and it kind of waves around, and it just kind of gives a fun little piece of movement. Well, whenever I add the pop-up animation, I go over to my properties panel and make some changes right away. First, I leave the style as hinge, but I have it come in from the top. In fact, I describe this to people as my real estate sign. Like if you've ever shopped for a home and you have a sign hanging in the front yard and it's kind of swinging in the wind, I like that effect. So I'm going to make the in behavior a top direction dropdown. The during behavior, I have it actually do nothing. I don't want it moving around. I want it nice and still. And then the out behavior, how it leaves the screen, I'm going to leave it on that hinge, but I'm going to have it swing back up to the top. So when I make those changes, now my content will drop in from the top of my screen, just like that. It'll do nothing during the recording, and then it'll swing out at the top. And every time I would add a behavior like that, I would have to make those changes. Well, no longer. Once I've made the changes to the behavior that I like, I can actually click this plus button at the top. It brings up the behavior preset titling, and I can call this a sign pop-up because it's how I want to describe it. And when I click OK, I actually have the sign pop-up show up here in my behaviors. It shows up with a little icon of a person there to show that it was a customized one. But not only does it do that, but it has the star there as well that I can click on and make a favorite. So I now have my custom preset behavior right here in my favorites menu. Whew, that is super helpful. So that's just one of the ways we've added changes to Camtasia 2020 to make your work a little faster. Another one is actually right in the media bin. The media bin itself has received kind of an overhaul. Not only can you, one, sort by different types of media up here in the top drop-down menu, by dimension, date, size. I actually use date added all the time because I want to know what the most current content is. I can actually change the layout of the media bin by selecting this button down here in the lower right-hand corner and choose how the thumbnails are going to look. Do I want them nice and large so I can see very clearly what that content is? Or do I even want it down here as a detailed list because I've got a ton of content in the media bin and I need to go through and work through it? So you actually have lots of different ways to choose how you can use your media bin. So that's two things we've talked about in Camtasia 2020 so far. We've talked about speed and consistency for all with templates. We've also talked about working your way faster, adding effects and annotations with favorites, presets, media bin overview, all those sorts of things come into play. Oh, by the way, did you happen to notice that when I was in the annotations area underneath the callouts, you can actually sort that by themes now, so you can see what your content will look like with the color theme that you have created. All those are just awesome uses of the way to work faster within Camtasia 2020. So I'm going to pull up a question here. With magnetized tracks, do other tracks also move with the base track? Oh, that's a great question. So let's say I have 2 tracks worth of content, or even 3, and I've got just these callouts sitting on the top. The magnetization of a track stays with just the track that you've magnetized. So I can magnetize each track individually, but you can also lock tracks so that maybe when you're working with syncing audio and video, you can very easily just magnetize one track at a time, lock one track. A lot of customization within your editing is there. Okay. So Ellen asked the question, so what if my recording is bigger or smaller than the placeholder? So that's a good question too. So we were talking about placeholders earlier. If I click and drag content into a placeholder, and when it turns green, I let go, I can actually replace it very easily if I have screen recording media. So let's go and grab that walkthrough here, and I drag it into that same place. Ripple replace replaces it exactly as the size of the recording it is, so it'll move the content around, especially if your track is magnetized. You also will have abilities to do ripple replace from beginning and end, where you can add automatic clip speed. We'll definitely have content around that on our YouTube channel, and with the follow-up email that you'll get from us, there's actually a really great link to using deeper parts of Camtasia 2020 as well. Okay, so let me move on to the next section, then we'll go into some more questions. So the next section is video creation consistency across teams. This is why I asked about teams earlier. I work on the customer education team here at TechSmith, and often, excuse me, often we are sharing content back and forth. Now, before it would be, creating a library, like I've got this what's new library, then going to manage library and exporting that library out, and then the person would then go and import that library into their instance of Camtasia, and we'd have the same library assets. Well, if I wanted to share other things like themes, I couldn't. If I wanted to share templates, which didn't exist, I couldn't. Well, we made that easy to do in Camtasia 2020 too. And that is the ability to create something called packages. And I actually love doing this because it's so easy and fun to do. I'll show you. If you go up to the File menu and choose Export, there's an option there called Package. And when I click on that, I actually get a view inside of all the content I have in my instance of Camtasia. My templates, my themes, my libraries, my customized shortcuts, my favorites tools that I just populated, and even customized tools that I've created. To create a package to share with someone else, I simply go through, and it's kind of like shopping. I want to share maybe the Acme screen one, maybe the University of Miami one, and a sneak peek demo. So those 3 templates I'm taking out of my template manager. I'm going to share them with someone. They don't actually leave. They're created in this package. I can go into my themes and choose any number of the themes that I have installed. I can choose a library. Like I was talking about libraries before, I can share more than one library at once, but for this example, I'll just use the What's New library. I don't have customized shortcuts on this machine, so I won't worry about that. But I do have favorites tools. We just made them in the webinar a couple minutes ago. So when I've selected all the items that I want in a package, I hit Export. It allows me to save it. We'll say this one's for Ryan. And when I hit Save, Camtasia is actually going to take all those pieces of content and it's going to build it into a package, which actually shows up as a Cam package file right on your computer. And then that file can be shared via email or in cloud sharing destination, however you share it. And then the person that receives it will simply open up their version of Camtasia 2020, go to File, Import, and choose Package. And they'll locate the package on their machine and hit Import. But the best part about the package, I can't overstate this enough. You open up a package, there's themes and libraries and callouts and all those sorts of things in there. The themes get installed with the themes. The library gets installed with the library. Things go right where they're supposed to go. You don't have to guess. You don't have to go searching for them. They are out there and ready for you. I am just so thrilled with that piece because we share content all the time. There's a bunch of other things inside of Camtasia, and this is where I kind of want to, before I get into more questions, show you some real simple ones. We've always had the ability for you to detach your canvas. This was helpful if you worked on multiple monitors, where you could have the canvas on another monitor full size and then use this monitor or your current monitor for editing purposes. Well, now we've actually added the ability to right-click on your timeline and choose Detach Timeline. So for those of us who maybe have widescreen monitors, you can actually put that on another monitor and stretch it all the way full size so you can see many of your tracks at once instead of only 3 or 4 at a time. It's basically letting you take advantage of the real estate that you have on the screens that you have available to you and make sure that you can edit in the way that you want to edit. We have something very simple in my mind called the ability to resize and auto resize text. If you select a piece of media, in this case a call out, there is a button here over on the right in the properties panel that says auto resize text. What that means is as you shrink and move around content that is filled in your call out, it will automatically resize itself to the call out and it won't clip it off. Like before, you might move your call out, make it a little smaller, and it would start to eliminate some of that content. You couldn't see it all, but now it auto resizes it as long as you have this checked, so you don't lose any of the content that you have in your call out. Something fun we've added is the ability to actually reverse transitions. Reversing transitions is something that a lot of people have asked for. So maybe we have, well, let's go to the one that I think is the most obvious, and that is our cube rotation. If I add a cube rotation as this transition right here, let's remove this one here. We'll delete that transition. And we'll add cube rotate down onto the screen. So if I rotate this through, cube is rotating from right to left. Well, maybe you don't want it to go right to left. Maybe you want it to go left to right. You can simply right click on the transition itself and you can choose reverse transition. And now it'll go from the left to the right. Just another additional piece of customization that you can do within Camtasia thanks to Camtasia 2020. Let's see, some other fun things we did with the media bin. This is actually pretty helpful for me, and that is you can actually right click inside of the media bin and select any unused piece of media. So in this case, I have the Camtasia logo here, and I right clicked and chose select unused media. That means it's in my media bin, but it's not on my timeline. So if I brought in, let's say, a PowerPoint presentation and there was 10 slides, and I'm building my video and I think it's all done, and I right click and choose select unused media, and I find out, whoops, I forgot to use this particular slide. I can quickly do that as well. Something as simple as right clicking and choosing delete unused media. When your video is complete, you can actually clean up your media bin by having Camtasia remove anything in your media bin that you didn't use in that project. Conversely, I can actually right click on a piece of media on the timeline and actually add it to something like my screen recording here, and I can say select in media bin. It'll go find it in my media bin. So if I have a media bin full of content, I can quickly find that media from the timeline back to my media bin, as well as right clicking on the media itself and finding it on the timeline. Just quick ways of creating a easier to use process. So there's a ton more, but I think I'd like to get to some questions before I show you the next big thing. So let's go to our questions document. So the question here is from Ron. Ron says, how is sharing between Windows and Mac? What are the limitations? So great question, Ron. The sharing, the packages and whatnot are easily shared between Windows and Mac. I actually use both a Windows and a Mac, so I share content back and forth. There is a rare situation, like maybe a font that isn't on one than the other, but other than that, materials inside of Camtasia will work back and forth without any problem. Let's see. Next question. Can a template have multiple tracks? Oh, yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have an example template. Let's go into Manage Templates here. There is one here called Product Review, Physical Product. If I click on that and choose New from Template, we won't worry about saving this particular project. We'll open that up here in the editor, because the question was, can a template have multiple tracks? So this is a template that can actually be downloaded from our asset library, and it has 3 tracks associated with it. It's got an audio track, which has background music. It's got a video track, which is all the placeholders where you're going to drop in content. And then you have a call out track here that has all those customizable, quick property callouts that you can change your content as you see fit. So that is, yes, templates can have multiple tracks. Good question. Okay. So another question that just came in says, if track 1 is magnetized, let's just magnetize track 1 for the case. Will annotations on track 2 and track 3 remain connected in place with the media in track 1 when it moves? No. So if I were to move, I can't move content on a magnetized track. If I unmagnetize a track and slide the media down, it only affects the media on that particular track. That's always been the case in Camtasia. If I magnetize it, it just pulls everything to the left and removes gaps. If you need to move stuff together, it's actually called a ripple move, and you can do that by multi-selecting content, holding Shift on your keyboard, and dragging it to the right or to the left. That's a good way to utilize that. Okay. Let's see another questions. I use animated intros and outros, but the majority of my projects are MP4 videos rather than screen recordings. Can I use those with templates? Elizabeth asks. Yes, Elizabeth, you can. As a matter of fact, so if we have this template pulled up, I actually have a library full of MP4s. This is all from a bicycle workshop here, thanks to Allison and Guy here at TechSmith. So this is a video of him adjusting his saddle height. If I drag that piece of media down into a placeholder and choose Ripple Replace, it wasn't a screen recording, it's an MP4 video, and that video was shot with our DSLR cameras, and it works with placeholders just the same way. So yes, you can use things other than screen recordings. Okay. Can I open projects that I created in earlier versions of Camtasia? Yes, you can. So let's say you had Camtasia 2019 and you open it in Camtasia 2020. When you do that the very first time, Camtasia 2020 is going to ask to convert that project to work with Camtasia 2020, and then have a version of that project that is now 2020 specific. If you make a video in Camtasia 2020, it cannot be opened in previous versions. You're going to want to move forward with that. So good question. All right, before I get to the last few questions, I want to show you something pretty magical. And when I say magical, I am not being, it's not hyperbole, it's pretty amazing. We wanted to make sure that advanced or really common users of Camtasia could do something a little bit more powerful with their creation process. And that is, we wanted them to have customization capabilities and a little bit more creative control over their videos. We have included something both on the Windows and Mac side called track mats. And I'm going to actually go back into my what's new, and I'm going to pull in a project. Actually, we'll open a project. So we're going to go into my training materials, and we'll go into this project file. So this project file was created by Brooks, who is the leader of Camtasia here at TechSmith. So this is a project where there is a screen recording. There is some drone video footage. It just happens to be some MP4 video. But he also has something called an alpha track associated with it. Right here, he has something that is an MP4 of flames. It's just kind of a flame, almost like a blowtorch blowing into the side. And he thought, wouldn't it be neat to use that flame as a transition? And by using track mats, of which you will get an entire series called Camtasia Insider on our YouTube channel. The link to that will be in your email after this presentation. You can use track mats to create a transition that looks something like this, where it's actually the fire itself, but the fire is actually showing through to that drone footage below, but it kind of gives this cool effect of the flame transitioning across the screen. He also has this one. This is just black ink. It looks like it's being spilled upwards, and he turned that transition, or that piece of media, into a transition as well. The use of, I'm going to say this, but the use of track mats is mathematically endless. There's so many things you can do with it, and I can't wait to see what magical, cool things people create with using track mats in Camtasia. So let's go back to our questions document here. We've got a few more minutes. Let's see. Are there any templates that you've created that might be widely beneficial? If so, is there any chance we could have copies sent to us? And that question comes from Greg. So Greg, great question. When you open Camtasia 2020 for the first time, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and you go to the template manager, the only one you'll see in there is this default template. However, there is a button in the upper right-hand corner that says download more templates. And when you click on that, you will be taken to the Camtasia asset library. This is a paid subscription. However, we did include a series of free templates that you can download. And you can find them easily by turning off the premium filter here and hitting apply. And when you do that, you're going to be introduced here to 9 additional templates that you can download right into Camtasia 2020 and use right away. So if I wanted to download one, I simply hover over it, get a little preview, and then I can click on the C to open in Camtasia. It'll bring down a package file and open it right inside of Camtasia and add it to your templates manager. In fact, I think I already had that one added. So if I go back to Camtasia, yep, sales video personalized pitch, just like that. I clicked on that one right from the template manager up in the assets library, and I have it available to me. Now, if I pay for the asset library and I see premium and I hit apply, the templates become much, much greater in terms of your choices. And not only that, you'd have access to all the other assets, media, music, sound effects, you name it. All right, next question. Favorites. Dana asks, do favorites save across all projects, or is it just on a per project basis? Great question. So any favorites that you add to your Camtasia editor experience, those favorites stay across all projects. It's kind of like putting something in the library. It's always available to you. So you can work faster within Camtasia by creating your own list of favorites, and they will be there and ready for you when you open your next project. So it's not across projects. As a matter of fact, if I hit new project, Control N, so I've got a blank canvas here, and I go to my favorites menu, all those favorite tools are waiting for me. So yep, you can create those favorites with confidence to use across multiple projects. Okay. Let's see, question from Jenny. When I upgrade to 2020 from 2019, will my library assets automatically import over to the new version? Yes. As a matter of fact, when I go to my library and use the drop-down menu, I have my Camtasia 2019 library still here, as well as Camtasia 2020 and any other libraries that I had already built in. So that is a great question. And yes, they do carry over. You don't have to worry about those whatsoever. Okay. One thing that the team wanted me to mention, and I don't want to fail to mention this because this is a big thing to me, we actually made some improvements to the webcam experience within Camtasia. So I'm actually going to click the recorder here, and I'm going to bring up the Camtasia recorder. And the Camtasia recorder itself actually looks a little bit different than you may be used to as well. Let's make this full screen here. So the recorder has been a little bit streamlined, a little bit changed. We took the system audio option, which was underneath the audio options down here before, and moved it up to a more accessible place. And in fact, when you turn it on, you'll actually see a audio meter if you have any sound that would be coming from your speakers typically. So if you have music playing in the background or anything like that, Camtasia will let you know by showing some sort of sound in your audio meter. But the big thing that we've done is, well, a couple things, is we've made great improvements to the webcam experience. So I'm going to turn on my webcam. And what you're going to notice right away is, hi, I'm Jason. I'm the one conducting your webinar. We have this automatically in the highest resolution 16:9 format that your webcam supports. So before, it would always force itself into a 4:3 older style webcam experience. So now if you're recording in a widescreen format or 16:9 format on your screen recording, your webcam will match that. And underneath the options of the webcam, you'll actually see that we have added the ability to not only change the target frame rate of your screen recording, but that of the camera as well, depending on what your camera will support. Now, every camera is a little bit different. I actually have a couple of different cameras plugged into my machine here, a couple of different Logitech ones. I would say as an everyday Camtasia user, this is one of my favorite improvements to Camtasia 2020 because I use the webcam quite often, not only in webinars like this, but in training situations, and making sure I look good and sound good is a great benefit to me as well. All right, let's go back to some of our questions here. Let's see. Hank asks, can you remove your older Camtasia versions without consequences? That is a huge question, Hank. I would make sure that any project that I'm going to want to utilize in the future, that I might open it up in Camtasia 2020 just in case. The biggest thing I do to hold on to an older version is simply in case I need to record the interface for a new version. But that's me. I create tutorials and content for learning inside of Camtasia. I would say that you can open up your old projects that were created in older versions of Camtasia with Camtasia 2020. I can get an official note on how far to go back. I have opened projects from Camtasia 2019 without any problem. I have opened up projects from Camtasia 2018 without any problem, but we can double choose that as well. All right, let's go here. Lauren was asking, she was asking, I noticed that you have tracks named in the example. How do you do that? Oh, you were talking about the template before, right? So if we went into manage templates and I brought in any template, any project whatsoever, yeah, you can actually customize the names of your tracks based on your needs. So I've done it where I have a track named voiceover, a track named callouts, and to change a track name, let's just add a track here. So track number 4, you simply right click on it and choose rename track. Hi, Lauren. So that's my Hi Lauren track now. That way you can keep things organized. I do it for my voiceovers or background music, or maybe that's where my screen recordings are going to go. Quite often I will rename tracks based on the content that I'm creating to help keep myself a little bit organized. Okay. So Stephen asks, are there training videos for each of these new features? We will need to be trained or reminded on how to use some of them. Yeah, thanks for asking, Stephen. So yeah, if you go up to the help menu inside of Camtasia 2020 and choose video tutorials, it's actually going to take you to the Camtasia tutorials webpage. And we have included new videos on all of the new feature sets. Short of track mats, you'll actually get a special series of videos that'll come in the email that'll be attached after this experience. But yep, learning about templates, both how to use one, how to create one, all those videos are down here on our tutorials page. You can watch them as many times as you want. They're available to you free. I think in total we made 16 brand new tutorial videos this year. So not only did we want to help you learn more about Camtasia 2020, we used Camtasia 2020 to make all of those tutorials. So proud of that fact. Very, very proud of that fact. So I do have another question that came in. Kelly brought a question to us and says, can you show us how to add your own custom annotations from previous projects to your favorites list? Sure. So if we're in we'll open up a new project here. And we will go in and go to this call out. We'll say this is our call out that we're going to use, and maybe we wanted to change the theme on it to this apple cinnamon. If I right click on it, or excuse me, now that I've made this change and I have it on my timeline, it shows up in my project. And the way I would do it is I would add it to my library so that content is there. And then while it's in here, you can use it across multiple projects. So if I'm going to drag it on here, I now have that available to me. Once you've made customizations to it, you can add it to your favorites menu. So what I did was I made subtle changes to my callout. In this case, I changed the color. Maybe on this one, I'm going to change the thickness of that outside line, just really, really obvious. When I click the plus button, like we did with our behaviors before, to create that brand new preset, it creates that content over here in my callouts. And it's actually underneath the style of user, which means I created my own custom callout. Then to add them to my favorites, I simply hover over it, choose the star, and I now have that customized callout that I built with my panel of properties right into my favorites menu. Okay. Fun question. You lead sessions an awful lot, Jason. For a person that's just starting out, what do you use as a microphone and a video camera to partner with Camtasia? Actually, this question comes up quite often. People ask this often. The answer I give in terms of what do I use, let me pull up my camera here. You always want to use whatever you have available. If you have a USB-based microphone available to you, I encourage you to use that because no matter what program you use, if you feed it good audio, you'll get a good result back out. So I use, not endorsed, but I use an Audio-Technica AT2020 USB mic. I have it on a boom arm so that I can have my hands free because I work with my hands a lot. And in terms of cameras, the camera I'm using for this webcam or for this webinar is a Logitech Brio, B-R-I-O. It's just a 4K webcam, and I use it within both of these components. I use in Camtasia on a daily basis. So I hope that answers that question. So it looks like we are getting close to time, and I want to make sure that I'm covering all your questions. So I'm going to take one more look over here at the question and answer pane and see if I'm covering everything that they wanted to know. Okay, looks like we're just about there. So at this point, Ryan, I'm going to bring you back in and see if there's any other questions that may have not made it to the document that we want to talk about before we end. And I'll pause for a second so that we can make up for the little bit of audio delay.
Thanks, Jason. No, I think that wraps us up on the questions. So that does wrap us for today's webinar as well. Thanks for answering those questions and for taking us through all those new features. And then I want to thank everybody who attended today for bearing with us through some technical difficulties. This was a particularly well-attended webinar, and I think we stressed the software just a little bit beyond what it was built to do. But that's okay. The recording will go out to everybody, and we'll try to clean that up a little bit before we send it out. So I want to remind you all that you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording in that email. And we'll also have other assets you might find helpful, like those tutorials Jason talked about, including one on templates. It'll have links to the TechSmith Academy, which is a great online resource we offer for free, and to the assets that Jason brought up as well. In addition to that, we will post the recording on our website at techsmith.com/webinars. And that's also a great resource for you to go to if you want to check out other webinars. We offer monthly getting started and deeper dive webinars. So if you want to learn more about the tools, those are a great place to start as well. In addition to that, we'd love to see what you make as you start diving into Camtasia 2020. So feel free as you share your videos on social media to tag us. And of course, we'd also love it if you use the hashtag #MadeWithCamtasia. We'd love to see that come through. Other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Support.techsmith.com is a great resource. There's an ability to chat in there as well as open up a ticket if you're having issues with the software itself. I also want to reiterate there's a quick question or survey at the end of this, and that'll just be a great spot for you to give us feedback so that we can improve on these as we move forward and continue to offer more webinars. Other than that, that wraps us up. Thank you for joining us for our first webinar unveiling Camtasia 2020. We will offer more of these, so if your colleagues are interested, check out the webinars webpage and they'll be able to register as well. Thank you all for coming today, and please enjoy the rest of your day.